that I do the Wayside Preacher out here. And I looked at this word and I looked at it and I said, it doesn't look right. And usually Marie will correct me on it. It was Stephen that said, rain isn't spelled R-E-I-N. And I knew it. And I even found the G. I had the G. Anyway, when Kathy called me in November, I said, and asked me if I would do this, I said, well, when is it? And she said, May. I thought, oh, sure, I'll be glad to. I think the world, with the way it is, it could be come to an end by that time. But here it is, May, and here I am today. I'm going to be using a little bit of a different reflection for you today. We talked about payback, and I really feel this is my chance to pay back God and also to pay back St. Paul's. So this is why I am up here today, for that payback. And I'm going to base my reflections on two things. A painting that struck me when I was down in Camp Restore in New Orleans. And I think it can affect everyone. It's just not for Hurricane Sandy victims. And secondly, I'm going to base my reflections on two verses of a beloved hymn written in 1836. I retired in 2011. And one of the things, I don't call it a bucket list, it's things I just want to do, was I wanted to go down to New Orleans with St. Paul's. And I did it that fall. Little did I know, that was the start of an adventure. And it's an adventure that St. Paul's, Pastor, how many years you and Larry go?
Oh, 6 or 7 probably.
It was a start of God preparing St. Paul's for Sandy. In the rec hall at Camp Restore, which is where we stayed both times, there was this picture. My son surprised me. My son here surprised me with it this Christmas. I was struck by it. It's awesome. The colors are awesome in it. The meaning of it. It wasn't just, it was a New Orleans artist that painted this. And his name is, his name is Terrence Osborne, and he captured what was going on in Katrina. But we can make this our own lives. It's not just about Hurricane Katrina, because our lives are always in constant turmoil. We may have marriage problems, we may have a death in the family, health problems, business problems, and that's our lives being pictured here. And in case you couldn't see it, I'll lift it up this side for you. And as I looked at it down there each time, I just loved it, loved the colors. I realized, I looked into it, and it reminded me of the third verse of a hymn. Just as I am, though tossed about, with many a conflict, many a doubt, fightings and fears, within, without, O Lamb of God, I come. And that's how I started this whole thinking process. I went back in 2012. Joyce went, Larry was there, a couple of other people. What you didn't realize up here was in August in 2012, there was a terrible hurricane that hit, called Hurricane Isaac. It hit in St. Bernard's Parish. We didn't hear about it because it wasn't New Orleans, but it devastated those people. We worked in houses. The first house we worked in, there was 12 feet of water in the house, and that's not an exaggeration because we could see the water line in the house. This man had real problems. We went in there, we really learned what it was to muck out. That house, we were doing more of the pulling out work that he hadn't completed. The second day, we were sent to a house further down in St. Bernard's Parish. It was an older couple that lived in that house. They had built that house. They had built some of the kitchen cabinets, I remember her saying, from the pecan trees out back. The flooring was all up. And you know what it reminded me of, the smell? It reminded me of the clam flats at low tide. It really smelled. We were in there mucking out, mucking hard, learning what to do. Not more than a month later, we come back here, and lo and behold, we have Sandy upon us. St. Paul's knew what to do because we had been going down there. God had prepared us for this problem. I stayed in my house. My house was built in the 30s as a summer home by my grandmother. We never had water in it. Nothing's going to happen. Maybe we'll get it on the porch. Fortunately, Glenn was changing jobs, so he was home at the time. We moved stuff off the porch. We'll be okay. We'll ride it out. I remember, I think I can leave that there. I remember getting my mop out. Well, in case it comes in, we'll sandbag by the porch. By 4 o'clock, I'm looking, I said, gee, the tide didn't go down that much this time. It's still up pretty high. But it'll be okay. Fortunately, we brought our cars up. One car was up here at the church, and one car was worked out okay for us, so we didn't lose our cars. All of a sudden, by about 7 o'clock, the water hit the porch, and then it started into the house. And I had my mop, and in 2 minutes I realized, forget the mop. And it just kept coming up, higher and higher. Glenn was smart. He started pulling out desks, my secretary, so I got all the drawers upstairs so that I didn't lose too much of my business materials. By the time the water was at a foot, I said, Glenn, I think it's time for us to head upstairs. And head upstairs we did. We totaled about 2 feet of water in the house. Fortunately, we didn't have a fire. Our lights had gone off already around 4 o'clock. What we did was, I grabbed the tide chart on the way up that Jerry O'Neill sends out. He's the local real estate agent. I won't tell you what Glenn pulled up. But we got upstairs on the sun porch area, and we both said prayers to ourselves. We didn't pray together. We each had our own thoughts. I just prayed that people would be safe and that we would get through this whole thing. And then we sat and we looked out the window, and we saw the most spectacular fireworks show with all the transformers blowing up in the distance. We also, Glenn had his radio that he was able to tune in, so we were able to get the Amityville Fire Department, and I have nothing but tremendous respect for volunteers. As you say, your guys got down to you there. There was a fire on Central Avenue, which was close to me. It was started in the garage by the car. I think the salt water hitting the car started it, and the car got on fire. And listening to them, just trying to get down to there. There's a tree down on the street. We'll have to go around this way. Listening to this whole thing. They did save the house, but I gave them nothing but admiration, even though we have to pay a lot for their party. And they deserve it. Finally, we kept checking and looking. And I checked the tide chart. It had started to calm down a little bit. Glenn went down and said, the water's starting to go down. We had a marker where it was. By the time it got to, we didn't get the water in our boots. We waited until it got there, and I said, you know what, this water wants to go out. So we went down, we opened up the doors. The killies went out. The cans of food, would start floating out. And that you grab and you try and put, you didn't want your garbage going out. Little did I know how much garbage was outside already. And it went out, it flowed out. Around 3 o'clock, the water was out of the house. We were exhausted. I said, let's go to bed. We slept a little bit. I was, in and out. And I'm one of these people that wakes up early anyway. So I woke up at 6 o'clock in the morning. There were about 4 houses in the neighborhood that stayed, that didn't evacuate. And I went out and I started looking around and surveying. And then some of the other neighbors started coming out, and everybody wanted to talk. That's what they wanted to do. They wanted to tell what their experience was. And we all got together and we talked. As I was walking around, I was also meditating. That time I was praying. And I just said, God, just give me the peace to get through this and show me the way. That's all I asked for. And at 10 o'clock, he sent out a sign that I felt was personally for me. The most spectacular rainbow in the western sky. I said, okay, God, that's it. We'll make it through. And we have made it through. Has it been good all the time? No. There's been ups and downs. But we made it through. That's when St. Paul's started to take over. And we are so fortunate that we had a congregation that knew what to do. In Suffolk County, I believe, having been to upstate, New York Rising, I was in the big conference, thousands of people with Andrew Cuomo there. That's why I appreciate what you're saying. Amityville, Lindenhurst. Lindenhurst was really hit hard. Babylon. I think we got some of the hardest hits in Suffolk County because this was the perfect storm. Full moon, high tide, hit it all at the same time, and the water blew in from the east to the west. And that's why it came up. I say it's not going to happen again, but one never knows. The first person from St. Paul's that came down was Pastor Anglin. I wasn't going anywhere. He came down. I remember his boots were muddy. He did the right thing. He knew what to do. He walked around and he listened. And he listened and he listened. And he must have listened to an awful lot of people because all he wanted to do was talk at the time. And then he ended up by praying and saying, I'll be back. The next two people that came down started I call them the teams with an S, St. Paul's. It was Larry and Dot McMillan. And what they did, Larry helped my sons start carrying stuff out, and God bless Dot. She got the crummiest job of all. Mind you, my house had 3 generations of things, stuff in it. She said, how many pots do you have? Well, I have my grandmother's pots, my mother's pots, and my pots. And she was emptying the sludge out, the salt water. I opened up a drawer, and because I had my grandmother's, mine, and my mother's, I had this many dishcloths. I said, well, I think I'm going to throw these out. They're full of mud, and they're full of dirt. She looks and she said, no, I'll take them home and wash them. I said, you're out of your mind. No, I'll be glad to. She went away with 2 bags of dish towels. Sunday morning, she greeted me. They were cleaner than I ever saw. They were fabulous. Little things like that meant so much. Then the team that I was with down in New Orleans, Larry organized them. I call them my team St. Paul's. Lee was there, Lee Silvera was there. She came with her hammer on, started taking the walls down. We knew what to do. Larry was an organizer. He was meant to be here at St. Paul's. He organized everything. In fact, I'll give you an aside on him. I know, Pastor, it's running out. I'm talking as fast as I can. Since I have been an elected official, we decided we really have a good disaster plan. And so we've had a disaster committee worked up, and I asked Pastor and Larry, they requested the churches come. I was talking to the Chamber of Commerce, who headed up the committee, Joanne Goodman at the time. I said, my church really was tremendously helpful. And she said, was your church the one that Larry was from? I go, yeah. She says, yeah, you guys knew what you were doing. And we did, because God prepared us for it. She said, he's a very level-headed thinker. I won't say anything else about the others. I met Carol and Phil Waltney. They came down. Phil is tremendous. Carol was working there. They were cutting out the sheetrock as well. I had known them before. Hi, how are you? But I really got to know them. What wonderful people we have at St. Paul's.
Yeah.
My good friend Joyce Spencer. I won't tell them what I paid you off with.
Oh, she paid.
2 weeks, and it was cold because I couldn't turn my heat back on. I knew my wires were bad. I turned the heat back on, and I heard pop, pop, and it went off until I could get an electrician to redo the whole underpinnings of the house. But I had to keep cleaning. She would come down. We were freezing. But she helped me wrap all my 3 sets of good dishes, my grandmother's, my mother's, and mine. And never broke. She brought her bicycle down. I didn't have any lights. Linda and Jerry Pollock showed up. Jerry right away said, you're going to need a hand truck. He went down to the beach, because they are going to be using it down at our beach. Brought it back. I can't tell you how many people have used it. And I can tell you, Terry Lynn, it's back down at the beach again. It was little things like that that helped so much. Coming up to church, just to use the telephone, because we had very poor service down there. Just to plug our telephone back in so we could recharge it. I used to give the insurance companies, call the church, they'll get the message to me, because I come up so often. Cindy and Carol Gray knocking at the door and saying, we can't do anything for you, but here are some brownies. They were the best brownies I ever tasted in my whole life. My sons are Eagle Scouts. So they turned off our gas. I had a gas stove. I could still use the top of it. Nah, can't. Might blow up the whole neighborhood. So our gas was all turned off in the neighborhood. We had our morning coffee, thanks to my mother's old coffee pot. We put it in the Weber grill, and my neighbor said that coffee every morning smelled so good. That was their Eagle Scout background. We were also blessed. There were so many blessings we had. First of all, coming to choir. Incidentally, I want to tell you, if you guys would join choir, you sing fantastically, and we need choir members. We meet every Thursday, and it's not long, and we harass Russell a lot. We have a good choir was a blessing for 4 of us, because of the fact that 4 of us were affected. 3 were out of our houses, and 1, Linda Kay, had 2 families living with her. Jimmy's sister and her mother. And we'd come, and it was our therapy session. Everybody would listen. How you doing this week? We'd talk to people. One of the women, her husband said to her, you know what, I really don't think you should go to choir. You're wasting too much gas. And her son said to her father, she needs that, let her go. That's not a waste of gas. And it was our way of talking things out. People asking, stay at my house, come for dinner. Showers. That was the one thing we had, cold water, and it was so nice when you could get a nice hot shower. I do think also, I was very blessed. I did have a house to move into, so I moved from October to April into a different house, which didn't get flooded and was on the street. But it was also God's way for telling me, all right, I've given you all this time to clean the stuff out. You didn't do it, I'll take care of it. So a lot of it got cleaned out that way. And lastly, my faith. I got a couple more things, okay? Okay. I did faith. My faith is what got me through. My family's faith is what got me through. We had very good friends of mine. They'd come down at night, we'd cook out on the grill, and I had a fireplace, so we'd light a fire and we'd all sit around in blankets with the fireplace. This is just a small aside also. Guy up on Dixon Avenue, every day he'd saw up some skid wood, and people would go up there and get the skid wood to keep their fires going. But they'd come and they'd cry, and they'd say, how you doing? And I'd have to talk them into, you're going to make it, you would. Because they didn't have that faith. They didn't have that realization. God's going to get me through. Is it going to be great every day? No. But we're going to make it through. And lastly, God has plans that you don't really realize He has for you. On January 8th, after I retired, I started to attend village board meetings. And a guy that I went to high school with also started. We had a few complaints. And so he calls me, he also was in the flooded area. So he calls me January 8th. He says, Jess, I'm running for mayor and you're going to run for trustee. And I go, oh no, that's the last thing. I have my house, I have all this stuff. This is crazy. But I talked to my sons and I talked to God. And the Rolodex in the brain kept going looking for an excuse. And none came up. And so I ran for political office. I thought I was just going to stir the pot a little bit, and we won. So you never know what's going to happen and where life will take you. And you got to go with the flow, as you've done in your life. You've moved around and gone with the flow. And that brings me to 2 more points, and then I'm done. This artist had remedies And the one remedy looks very familiar to what you're seeing now. This is what he suggested how to make houses better. And I love the hammock. I'm going to tell that to the zoning board underneath. However, living on the water, this is my favorite one. He's putting the houses in the boat. Now I'm going to end up, Pastor, and I promise this is the last thing, with the last verse.
Very good.
With the last verse, the 5th verse of Just As I Am. Just as I am, thou wilt receive, will welcome, pardon, cleanse, relieve. Because thy promise I believe, O Lamb of God, I come, I come. Thank you so much.